There are places on this earth where memory does not fade, where the soil remembers blood spilled 1,000 years ago, where trees grow old enough to witness empires rise and collapse into dust. Brazil is such a place. Beneath the pulse of modern cities, beneath roads carved through ancient flesh, there exists another world, a Brazil that the conquistadors feared to name, a land the Guarani could not baptize away, because you cannot baptize gods. The Tupi knew them. The Guarani spoke their names in rituals lost to time. Even the Portuguese, in their fever dreams, deep in jungles that swallowed men whole, they saw them too. These are not the sanitized fairy tales printed in children's books. These are the entities that walked between the living and the dead, the protectors who demanded tribute, the punishers who tasted sin on human breath. Tonight, we speak their names again. Tonight, we remember what colonization tried to bury, and perhaps, whispering their names in the darkness, we called them back. This is the testimony of Brazil's forgotten gods. This is the record of powers older than Christ, older than conquest, older than forgetting. Let us begin. Curupira, the forest's red-haired demon. In the deepest veins of the Amazon, where sunlight dies before touching earth, there walks a guardian. His feet face backward. His hair burns red like fresh spilled blood. His name is Curupira, and if you hear him calling your name from the trees, it is already too late. The Tupi spoke of him first, a spirit no taller than a child, skin dark as wet bark, hair cascading crimson down his back. But it is his feet, always his feet, that seal your fate, because they face the wrong direction. Imagine you are a hunter. You find tracks leading north, fresh, deep in the mud. You follow them for hours, for days. The tracks always just ahead, always fresh, but you never find what made them, because you are walking away from him. The tracks lead you in circles, and Curupira watches as you go mad. He rides a peccary with tusks that split bone. He carries a club carved from wood that does not rot. He moves without sound, without disturbing leaves, without breaking twigs. And the forest bends around him like water around stone. But his true weapon is not violence. It is confusion. Hunters report hearing their own names whispered from the darkness, the voices of their wives, their children, begging them to come closer. They follow and find nothing, only deeper forest, only shadows that move wrong. Some emerge weeks later, half mad, fingernails torn from clawing trees that all look identical. Some never emerge at all. The indigenous people understood. They left offerings, tobacco at the roots of ancient trees, cachaça poured into the earth, apologies spoken before taking a single branch, because Curupira does not forgive greed. He protects the forest from those who take without asking, from those who kill pregnant animals, from those who burn the sacred green for profit. There is a story from the 1970s. During the construction of the Trans-Amazonian Highway, workers began disappearing. Equipment failed without cause. Entire crews abandoned their posts, reporting a figure with red hair watching them from between the trees. One foreman, a man of reason, a man of science, set up cameras. The footage showed nothing unusual by day, but at night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., every camera dissolved into static. And in that static, for just 2 frames, something appeared at the clearing's edge. Something with backward feet. The foreman destroyed the tapes. The highway was built. But even now, that stretch of road, kilometer 347, has the highest accident rate in the entire Amazon basin. The locals know why. They still leave offerings, still whisper apologies to the trees, because Curupira is patient, and the forest always collects its debts. But deeper still, beneath root and soil, something else stirs. Boitata, the serpent of fire. Fire purifies, fire destroys, and in the heart of Brazil's wilderness, fire has eyes. They call it Boitata, the serpent of stolen light. Before the Portuguese landed, before the Jesuits built their missions on indigenous graves, the people told of a great flood, a deluge that drowned the world, submerging trees, drowning animals, covering everything in endless water. But one creature survived, a serpent, small, insignificant. It hid in a cave and waited. And as the waters refused to recede, it grew hungry. So it began to eat the only thing it could, the eyes of the dead. Eyes of jaguars, eyes of capivaras, eyes of birds and fish, and all the drowned things floating in that dark water. The serpent consumed them all, and with each pair of eyes devoured, it absorbed their light, their fire, their ability to see in eternal darkness. When the flood finally receded, the serpent emerged, but it was no longer small. It had become vast, translucent, and inside its body burned 1,000 stolen eyes, all blazing with unholy light. This was Boitata, guardian of fields, protector of green things, destroyer of those who set fires.
The Tupi called it Boitata, the fire thing. The Guarani knew other names, but all meant the same: death to those who burn the forest. Even today, in remote corners of the Pantanal, the stories persist. A rancher clears land with flame. Hectares of ancient forest turn to ash for cattle grazing. That night, he sees light in the distance, a ribbon of fire, moving toward him. He thinks it is his own fire spreading. He is wrong. Boitata appears as a serpent of pure luminescence, 50 feet long, sometimes longer. Its body transparent, and inside the flames and the eyes, hundreds of them, thousands, all staring at once. Those who look into those eyes go blind. Those who run are burned alive. And those who stand still, they say Boitata can smell guilt. It tastes ash on human hands. It knows if fire was born from need or greed. Need might be forgiven. Greed is consumed. There exists a document written in 1560 by Padre José de Anchieta, one of the first Jesuits to penetrate Brazil's interior. He wrote of a great serpent of fire near the college in São Paulo. The Tupiniquim refused to approach it, calling it Boitata, come to punish colonizers for burning sacred groves. The Padre dismissed it as superstition. But he also noted 3 Portuguese settlers found dead near the site, bodies burned from the inside out, eye sockets empty, charred. The Padre never mentioned Boitata again. In recent years, during the fires that consumed the Amazon, there have been reports. Firefighters seeing something moving through the flames, not away, through. A serpent of light and smoke, leaving no trace, its presence felt as a wave of unbearable heat. The indigenous fire brigades know. They leave offerings before fighting fires. They ask permission. They apologize for human destruction. Because Boitata does not distinguish between arsonist and rescuer. It only sees those who walk where forest has burned. So, if you find yourself in Brazilian wilderness at night, and you see light in the distance, moving like a river of flame, do not approach. Do not look into its eyes, and pray your hands are clean. Yet not all dark gods are vengeful protectors. Some are chaos itself.
Saci Perere, the one-legged trickster. They tell children Sasi is harmless, a prankster, a mischievous spirit who hides keys and tangles horse manes. They tell children this to help them sleep. But the truth is older, darker. Sasi Perere appears as a black boy with one leg, smoking a pipe, wearing a red cap, moving in whirlwinds. Over centuries, he was absorbed into colonial folklore, sanitized, made safe for picture books. But the indigenous peoples remember what he truly is: an embodiment of chaos, a spirit that predates form itself. The original Sasi was not a boy. It was something ancient, something the Tupi called Cha-Si, a one-legged forest demon with power to bend reality. It could summon storms, make hunters lose direction, turn milk sour, cause crops to fail. It was not evil. It was beyond such human concepts. It simply interfered. Legend says Sasi once had 2 legs, but he challenged a powerful shaman to a contest of magic, and in his arrogance he lost. His leg was taken as punishment, but instead of humility, he found rage. He turned his pain into mischief, his imbalance into chaos, and he vowed to make the world as broken as he had become. Farmers in Brazil's interior still leave offerings, not from love, from negotiation. Because Sasi can ruin you. He braids horse manes so tight they cut skin. He makes tools break at critical moments. He traps you in whirlwinds, spinning you until you cannot tell earth from sky, until your mind fractures like glass. And if you capture him, if you steal his red cap, the source of his power, he must grant a wish, but there is always a price. There is a story from Minas Gerais, early 1900s. A man named João captured Sasi by throwing a rosary into a whirlwind, just as his grandmother taught him. The spirit appeared, furious, without his cap. João held the cap, made his wish: wealth. Sasi nodded. You will have your wealth. The next day, João found gold on his land, a vein so rich it made him the wealthiest man in the region. But his children died, one by one. His wife went mad. His friends abandoned him. And when he was old, sitting alone on his mountain of gold, Sasi appeared in his bedroom. The spirit held out his hand. João, weeping, returned the cap. Sasi smiled. You had your wealth, he said. I never promised anything else. Then he vanished in a whirlwind, taking João's life with him. The folklore softened Sasi over time, made him a mascot. But in the countryside, old people still teach the rules. Never follow a whirlwind, never mock a one-legged shadow, and never steal the red cap unless you are prepared to lose everything else. Because Sasi does not teach lessons, he simply reminds you chaos is the natural state of the world, and order is the lie we tell ourselves. But if Sasi is chaos, the next spirit is divine punishment made flesh. Headless Mu, the headless woman. In the interior of Brazil, in towns where churches stand at the center of existence and sin is measured in whispers, there gallops a creature through the night. She has no head, but she screams. They call her Mula Sem Cabeça, the headless mule, and she was once a woman. The legend comes from colonial times, when the Catholic Church held dominion over souls and bodies. Priests were meant to be celibate, untouchable, representatives of God on earth. But men are still men. And women were always blamed. The story says any woman who has relations with a priest, who seduces or is seduced by a holy man, is cursed. On Thursday nights, when the clock strikes midnight, she transforms. Her head disappears in a burst of flame. Her body becomes that of a mule, dark, powerful, with iron horseshoes that spark against stone. And from her neck, where her head should be, fire erupts. Blue flames, orange flames, flames that illuminate but bring no warmth. And she screams, a sound that is part animal, part human, part something else entirely. Rage and pain and eternal punishment compressed into sound. She gallops through countryside, through forests, trampling crops, crashing through fences. Anyone who sees her must throw themselves to the ground and close their eyes. If you look, she will chase you. If you run, she will hunt you down and trample you to death. The only way to break the curse, remove her bridle, the iron bit in her mouth. Remove it, and she transforms back, naked, weeping, with no memory of what she became. But who would approach a headless creature of fire? Who would reach into those flames? The truth beneath the legend is darker than the monster. This was a tool of control, a story to keep women away from priests, to ensure that if a holy man broke his vows, the woman bore not just social shame, but supernatural punishment. She became the monster. He remained a man of God. But stories have power. Over time, the Mula Sem Cabeça became more than cautionary tale. People reported seeing her, hearing her. Fields destroyed, fences trampled, horseshoe marks burned into earth, marks that glowed red even in daylight. In the 1950s, in Goiás, there was a scandal. A young woman, beautiful, devout, having an affair with the town priest. When discovered, the priest was quietly relocated. The woman was branded, shunned, driven from her home. She disappeared into the forest. That Thursday night, the town heard galloping, terrible, thunderous, and screaming like nothing human. Several claimed to see a mule with fire where its head should be, running through the square, circling the church 7 times before vanishing into darkness. The next morning, they found the priest dead, 200 kilometers away in his new parish. Body trampled, face frozen in absolute terror, and on his chest, burned into flesh, a horseshoe mark. The old women still warn their daughters, not just about priests, about the price of being blamed, about becoming a monster in other people's stories. Because the Mula Sem Cabeza is not just about sin. She is about rage. The rage of women punished for powerful men's crimes. The rage of those silenced, transformed, made into warnings instead of being seen as human. And on Thursday nights in deep countryside, when you hear hooves and see fire in the distance, remember her, not as a monster, but as a woman who was turned into one. Yet not all transformations are curses. Some are chosen. Kuka, the witch of eternal nightmares. There is a witch in Brazilian folklore who never sleeps. She cannot, and she ensures children do not sleep either. Her name is Kuka, and she is older than Brazil itself. The Portuguese brought her ancestor, the Coca, a dragon creature from Iberian myth used to frighten children into obedience. But when she arrived in Brazil, she changed. She absorbed indigenous spirits, African entities. She twisted and grew into something entirely new, something worse. Kuka appears as an old woman with wild hair, or as an alligator with yellow eyes, or as something between, a shapeshifter who takes whatever form will terrify you most. She lives in a cave, deep in forest, far from civilization, and from this cave she emerges at night, hunting for misbehaving children. She kidnaps them, takes them back to her lair, and there in the darkness she does. The stories never say what. That is part of the terror. But Kuka is not simply a monster. She is a witch, a being of ancient magic, connected to primal forces of nightmare and nature. Some versions say she was once human, a woman who delved too deep into forbidden knowledge, who made pacts with entities that should not be named, who sacrificed humanity for power. And part of that power was immortality. But immortality came with a price. She could never sleep. Imagine it, centuries of consciousness, no rest, no dreams, only endless wakefulness, driving her slowly mad. Some say this is why she hates children, because they sleep peacefully, something she will never do again.
Others say she feeds on their dreams, trying desperately to experience rest vicariously, stealing the sleep she can no longer have. In the 20th century, Kuka was sanitized for television, made into a bumbling villain for children's shows. But in the interior, the older generation remembers. Locked doors at night, prayers before bed, not from devotion, but protection. Disappearances. There is a story. 1930s, Pernambuco. 5 children vanished from a village over 3 months. Authorities searched. Dogs were brought. Forest combed. Nothing.
An old curandera, a healer who practiced the old ways, told the parents what they already suspected. Kuka had taken them. The village formed a hunting party, not for an animal or human kidnapper, for a witch. They carried iron tools, blessed water, prayers sewn into their clothing. They found a cave 3 miles into forest, entrance narrow, barely wide enough for a man. Inside, remnants. Children's shoes, locks of hair, crude dolls made from bone and cloth. No bodies, no kuka. Just a smell, sulfur and rotting flowers. And on cave walls, words. In a language none recognized, written in something dark, sticky. They sealed the cave, filled it with stones and concrete, placed a cross over it. The disappearances stopped, but caves can be reopened. Kuka represents something fundamental, the fear of what lurks in darkness, the terror of consciousness without rest, of time stretching infinitely forward with no escape. She is the nightmare that does not end when you wake. She is the shadow in the corner of your childhood bedroom. She is the reason children are taught to behave, not from morality, but from fear. And even now, sanitized and mocked, she persists in the collective unconscious. Because every culture needs a witch. Every society needs a monster to blame when innocence is lost. When children disappear, when sleep brings no rest, when darkness feels too alive. Kuka is waiting. She is always waiting, because she has nothing but time. But not all Brazilian spirits are hideous. Some are beautiful, and that makes them far more dangerous. Boto Cor-de-Rosa, the seducer of the Amazon. In the Amazon, where rivers are veins of the earth, and water holds as many secrets as forest, there lives a creature of impossible beauty. They call him Boto, the pink river dolphin. And at night, he becomes something else. By day, he swims through murky waters, a large dolphin, pink-skinned, intelligent, playful. Fishermen see him often. Children wave from riverbanks. But when the sun sets, he transforms. The Boto emerges from water as a handsome man, tall, charming, dressed in white linen, wearing a hat to cover the blowhole that remains atop his head. He goes to village festivals, parties, celebrations along the river, and he seduces. Women find him irresistible, his voice smooth as the river current, his eyes holding the depth of the Amazon itself. He dances well, whispers poetry, smells of the river, but in a way that is intoxicating. And when he chooses a woman, she cannot resist. They slip away together into darkness toward water. There, by the riverbank or in a hidden canoe, he takes her. And the encounter is transcendent, beyond human experience, a pleasure that borders on drowning. When dawn approaches, he returns to the river, transforms back into a dolphin, and the woman wakes alone, unsure if it was real or dream. 9 months later, she gives birth, and the child, they say the child has webbed fingers or toes, or a strange affinity for water, or eyes that are too knowing, too deep. The child is the son or daughter of the Boto. This legend served a social purpose. When a young woman became pregnant out of wedlock, she could blame the Boto, a socially acceptable explanation, a way to avoid shame. The father was not a married man or irresponsible boy. It was the river spirit, and who could prove otherwise? But like all folklore that persists, there is something beneath the convenience, something real. The Boto dolphin itself is strange, one of few freshwater dolphins in the world. Its pink color from blood vessels close to skin. It is intelligent, unnervingly so. Fishermen report Boto dolphins helping herd fish, seemingly understanding human gestures. And there are the disappearances. Women vanishing near rivers. Bodies found drowned with strange marks on skin. Expressions on their faces, not quite terror, not quite peace. Something between. Something like ecstasy and horror merged. In 2003, a documentary crew interviewed locals about the Boto legend. And old fishermen, skeptical of spirits, told them a story. 30 years earlier, he saw something. Fishing at night, he saw a man in white emerge from water, just walk out of the river, fully dry, as if climbing invisible stairs. The man looked at him, smiled, and walked toward the village. The fisherman followed at a distance, watched the man enter a festival, watched as women gravitated toward him, saw him leave with a young woman, the fisherman's cousin's daughter. The next morning, the fisherman confronted her. She had no memory of the night, but she was wet, clothes soaked with river water, and on her neck, teeth marks. Not human teeth, dolphin teeth. The fisherman went to the river, called for the boto, shouted challenges, threw stones into water. A dolphin surfaced, pink, large. It looked at him with an eye that held too much understanding. And the fisherman swears to this day, the dolphin smiled. The boto represents something primal, the seduction of the unknown, the allure of the wild, the danger of beauty that is not quite human. He is why mothers warn daughters not to swim alone, not to attend festivals by the river after dark, not to trust handsome strangers who appear from nowhere. Because some lovers disappear with the dawn, and some you drown in. If you ever find yourself at a festival along the Amazon, and a man in white approaches you, charming and beautiful and smelling of the river, check his hat. Look for the blowhole. And whatever you do, do not follow him to the water, because the boto always returns to the river. The question is, will you? But if the boto is the seducer, the next spirit is the seduced who became the seducer.
Ayara is the siren of the rivers. There is a woman in the rivers of Brazil who sings so beautifully, men forget their own names. She was once human. Now she is vengeance, shaped as beauty. Her name is Ayara, or Uyara, or Yara. The spelling changes. The story remains. She is a mermaid, lowered body of a fish, scales shimmering green than silver, upper body of a woman so beautiful the sight of her stops the heart. Her hair is long and black, floating in water like river weed. Her eyes the color of deep water, and her voice is a net that catches souls. But Ayara was not always a monster. She was a warrior. The Tupi tells her origin. Ayara was daughter of a warrior in her tribe, stronger than her brothers, faster, more skilled with bow, club, and spear. Her father praised her, the tribe respected her. but her brothers were jealous. Jealousy is poison that rots from within. Her brothers conspired, waited until she slept, then attacked, a cowardly ambush in darkness. But Ayara was too skilled, even half asleep. She fought back. And, in defending herself, she killed them, both of them. When her father discovered the bodies of his sons, he did not ask what happened, did not investigate, did not consider that his daughter might have been defending her life. He saw only dead sons and a living daughter. So he condemned her.
The tribe bound her and threw her into the river, a punishment for killing her brothers, even though they had tried to kill her first. She drowned. But the fish took pity on her. The river spirits recognized injustice, and in death they transformed her, gave her a new form, a new voice, and a new purpose. Revenge. Now Iara sits on rocks in the river, combing her long black hair, and she sings. Her voice carries across water like mist, like memory, like desire itself. Men hear it and are compelled. Fishermen, travelers, anyone near the water. They walk into the river, drawn by that voice, unable to resist, and she pulls them under, drags them down to the riverbed, drowns them, just as she was drowned. But some versions say she does not kill them immediately. She keeps them in underwater caves, in places where air pockets allow them to breathe just long enough to realize they will never leave. She keeps them as company because she is lonely, because she was killed by those who should have loved her. Fishermen along the Amazon know her song. They recognize it, a melody that sounds like home, like comfort, like everything you've ever wanted. Smart fishermen plug their ears with wax. Wise fishermen stay away from certain stretches of river entirely. There are stories of men who escaped, who broke free from her enchantment at the last moment. They describe her as unbearably beautiful, but with eyes that hold infinite sadness. They say that up close her song has words, and the words are, "Why did you let them kill me?" Some shamans say Iara could be redeemed, that if someone truly loved her, not for her beauty, but for her pain, she might become human again. But who could love a drowned woman? Who could embrace someone whose touch means death? Iara represents the tragedy of injustice, of being punished for surviving, of being blamed for defending yourself, of being transformed by betrayal into something monstrous. She is every woman condemned for a man's crime, every victim turned into a villain, every drowned girl whose story was never believed. And if you ever hear singing from a Brazilian river, a voice so beautiful it makes you weep. Do not follow it. Do not seek its source, because Iara's beauty is a trap, and her embrace is drowning. But deep in the forest, beyond water, beyond fire, there waits the oldest guardian of all.
Anyanga, the white deer spirit, forest guardian. In the deepest heart of the Amazon, where trees grow so tall they pierce clouds, where the air is thick enough to drink, there exists a presence, not quite God, not quite ghost, but something between. They call it Anyanda, the white deer, the forest's eternal watch. The Tupi spoke of it in hushed voices, a spirit that protects animals from hunters, a guardian of balance, an entity that appears when the natural order has been violated. Anyanga takes many forms, sometimes a white deer with eyes that glow like embers, sometimes a massive tapir with breath that smells of decay, sometimes a creature that has no name, something composite, something wrong, something that should not exist but does. But most often, it appears as the white deer, pure white. Antlers like branches of a sacred tree, eyes that hold the weight of millennia. It moves through forest without sound, appearing suddenly before hunters who have taken too much, killed too wastefully, shown too little respect. Those who see it rarely survive to tell the tale, and those who do survive are never quite the same. There is a story from the Tupi, ancient, passed down through generations. A hunter named Arasi was the best in his tribe, but he grew arrogant. He killed more than he needed, took trophies, wasted meat, hunted sacred animals during breeding season. The elders warned him. He laughed. One day, deep in forest, he saw a white deer, the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. He raised his bow, drew back the string, aimed for its heart, but before he could release, the deer looked at him, and he saw eternity in its eyes. He saw every animal he had ever killed, felt their pain, their fear, their confusion as life left their bodies. He felt his own death repeated 1,000 times. When he came to, he was lying on the forest floor. Days had passed. His bow was gone, his arrows scattered, and carved into his chest, not cut, but burned, was the image of a white deer. Arase returned to his tribe changed. He never hunted again. He spoke only in whispers, and every night for the rest of his life, he dreamed of those eyes, those ancient, knowing eyes, watching him, judging him. The shamans say Ananga is not cruel. It does not punish from malice. It simply maintains balance. It is the forest's immune system, appearing when the natural order is threatened, eliminating the threat, whether that threat is a disease, an invasive species, or a human. There are modern stories too. Logging companies that ventured too deep, workers who reported seeing a white deer in the distance, always watching. Equipment began to fail. Chainsaws would not start. Trucks broke down inexplicably. Men began having accidents, falling trees that should not have fallen, injuries that made no sense. And always, someone would report seeing the white deer just before disaster struck. One foreman, a practical man who did not believe in spirits, set up a hunting trap for it. A steel jaw trap hidden near where the deer had been seen. That night he heard the trap spring, heard something scream, a sound like the forest itself crying out in pain. He ran to check his trap. It was empty. But his right leg, was shattered, bones broken in multiple places, as if caught in a massive trap. The doctors could never explain it. The shamans say that Anhanga is both guardian and judge. It protects the innocent, the animals that cannot speak, the plants that cannot flee, the balance that cannot defend itself. But it is also a reminder that humans are not above nature. We are part of it. And when we forget that, when we take too much, destroy too carelessly, act as if the world exists only for our benefit, Anhanga appears. Some say it is the oldest of all Brazilian spirits, that it existed before the Tupi, before any human set foot in this land, that it is not a god created by belief, but a force that simply is. The embodiment of the forest's will, the conscience of the green world. And it is still there, still watching. In every protected forest, every conservation zone, every place where wilderness remains, the white deer walks. In every protected forest, every conservation zone, every place where wilderness remains, the white deer walks. Hunters who enter these places with respect, who take only what they need, who thank the forest for its gifts, sometimes glimpse it in the distance, a flash of white between trees, eyes that glow like embers, and they feel not fear, but reverence. Because Anyanga is not evil, it is balance itself. And in a world increasingly out of balance, perhaps we need it more than ever. We have spoken their names, Curupira, with his backward feet and crimson hair, Boitaka, the serpent of stolen light, Sasi, the one-legged embodiment of chaos, Mula sin cabeza, the headless woman ablaze with rage, Kuka, the sleepless witch of eternal nightmares, Boto, the beautiful seducer beneath the river's surface, Iara, the drowned warrior turned siren, and Ananga, the white deer who watches over the balance of all things. These are not children's stories. They were never meant to comfort. They were meant to warn, to teach, to remind. The conquistadors tried to erase them. The missionaries attempted to baptize them away. The modern world dismissed them as superstition. But they remain.
Because these entities were never truly myths. They were memories. Memories of a time when humans understood they were not masters of nature, but participants in it. Memories of forces older than empires, deeper than oceans, more enduring than stone. Memories of gods who did not ask for worship, only respect. And perhaps that is the true terror. Not that these beings might exist, but that they must exist. Because if there is no good Apira to punish greed, if there is no Boitata to burn those who destroy, if there is no Anyanga to maintain balance, then who will stop us from consuming everything, from burning it all to ash, from taking until there is nothing left to take? These dark gods of Brazil are not villains. They are mirrors, reflecting back our own destruction, our own imbalance, our own forgotten relationship with the world that birthed us. The indigenous peoples knew this. They lived with these spirits, not in fear, but in understanding. They made offerings. They apologized. They took only what they needed. They remembered that the forest, the river, the earth itself was alive and watching. But we forgot. We paved the forests, dammed the rivers, built cities on sacred ground and called it progress. We forgot, but they did not. Curupira still walks where forest remains. Boitata still burns where fires rage. Iara still sings in the deep waters. And Anangha still watches. So tonight, as you lie in darkness, consider this. What if speaking their names does not simply recall them to memory? What if it recalls them to existence? What if every telling of their stories, every whisper of their deeds, every moment we remember them gives them power? The shamans say that belief creates reality. That attention is a form of invocation, that to name a thing is to call it forth. And we have named them tonight, all of them. So perhaps somewhere in the darkness of the Amazon, somewhere along the rivers of Brazil, somewhere in the forgotten corners where wilderness still breathes, they are stirring. Feeling the weight of their names spoken aloud, remembering that they were never truly forgotten, only sleeping, waiting, watching. The dark gods of Brazil do not die. They cannot die because they are not separate from the land. They are the land, its memory, its conscience, its rage. And the land always remembers. Sleep well, if you can. They're listening.